All right.
Awesome. Welcome. Let's get Instagram joining us
Oh,
here.
yeah, let me go live on there. All right.
Awesome. All righty. How are you this evening, Miss Sherry? How
I
was your
am
Monday?
good. It's been good. We started out at 41 degrees this morning, and we're currently sitting at looks to be about 68. So we
Jeez.
had quite the swing today. Um, but so I went from wearing sweatpants this morning to shorts this afternoon.
I was going to say, and you're cooler than us. It was like 46 here and 72 currently. So
Isn't
you're,
that crazy? Yeah.
although we do end up and have a like 60% chance of rain later today. So
We
factor
had
that in
that
there.
all day Saturday here in Texas. So, but yeah. So, welcome to our viewers. Welcome to our Facebook viewers, our Instagram viewers, uh, our, of course, YouTube viewers, um, Twitch. Hold on. I should write these down so I get them all. Rumble, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and what did I forget in the list?
I think you got them. Facebook,
Woo!
YouTube,
How's that
Twitch,
for?
Instagrams, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So, yes, we are streaming and uploading to multiple platforms. So, welcome wherever you may be listening from. Leave us a comment, leave us feedback if there's topics you want us to cover. I know we also got people joining over live on Instagram. So, welcome, welcome, welcome to all of the above. And for those that are listening to the audio version on podcast, welcome.
Welcome. So, Becky, how was your Monday?
My Monday wasn't too bad. It was a Monday. Lot going on, trying to be an advocate and be a voice for helping people that are supportive of the wellness space and just being that voice of reason, I guess, for several people, and that not sure really what that may end up and look like in the coming days, but I am out there to be a supporter and do what's right for the people. So it was
Absolutely.
an interesting Monday, but that's all right. I'm
Well, we came up with a good topic for tonight, didn't we?
We did, my dear. Four four key areas that we need to work on optimizing to help support our health and our longevity.
Yes. Yes, yes. When I think both of us when we got started in our health journey, we didn't realize the importance of these what we're the topic we're going to talk about tonight. Um because at the beginning it was more about right nutrition, what I can eat, what I can't eat. And I think we talked today that people are expecting a Weight Watchers do's and don'ts,
Mhm.
and we've been conditioned to that. So you've got, people will say, "Well, can't you just tell me what to eat?" And the thing is no, because and yes, but no, because what I eat is completely different for my body than what Becky eats, right?
Absolutely. And part of the four areas we will end up and go into that in what we're talking about tonight, because where we live, our environment, all of that is going to play a role in what we're consuming. Whether you're in California, whether you're in New York, whether you're in Texas or Nebraska, right? It's all
Yeah.
going to end up and play a role. So, like I said, that will get factored into the conversation tonight. But it's not, even at that, it's not always a this is what you're going to eat, right? It's what is your hormones? What is your inflammation? How, what is your metabolism like, right? Are you a 20-year-old? Are you a 40-year-old? Are you postmenopausal? Are you cycling? Are you, an male athlete? Are you, there's so much variance of what a person is doing and what a person can consume, that it's not a one size fits all dietary camp.
Correct. But if you have a lot of inflammation, and people don't realize what the type of metabolic diseases is inflammation driven. My type 1 diabetes, inflammation driven. Blood pressure, inflammation driven. Go ahead and add to that. Alzheimer's.
Anywhere, let's just say anywhere from Alzheimer's to obesity, heart disease, hypertension. I mean, the list ultimately goes on when arthritis, gout, brain fog. Many people don't end up and relate that their mental clarity to inflammation, and mental clarity plays a big role in the brain inflammation. So, I mean, there are several areas or several things that can be considered into inflammation, right? And that's also can be related to low exclusion zone water. So it can be people that even have, a back pain, knee pain, don't hold, a chiropractor adjustment, any of the quote matrix of the body, right, can lead to this inflammation of the body. So it all does end up and play a role in there when we are talking about the body and the inflammation, and what we are dealing with. And so anything basically that involves head to toe, right?
Yeah.
The bones, the cartilage, the ligaments, the tendons, any of the fascia of the body, any of that, right, that has been dysregulated, not only on the circadian side, but with things that disrupt it. So our living environment, being under the wrong type of lighting, being indoors, heavy technology use, lifestyle activities that are, destroying this, being sedentary, old injuries, scar tissue, chronic dehydration, not getting proper water. I mean, I can't tell you how many times you and I talk about the different types of water and structuring and solarizing and, just working on that, multiple surgeries. But one of the things, that I want to also talk about is this can be fixed. This inflammation that we have typically is, like I said, it's not just, change our lighting, but, or, we can't have a poor diet and have good lighting, right? You can't be outdoors all day long, but have a poor diet of crackers and cookies and, snack foods, processed foods, and expect to have low inflammation and not have gout, not have arthritis pain, not have brain inflammation. That is all a side effect of it. It all has to be intertwined and work together. And so there are things that are builders of this, and that is doing a low inflammation dietary approach. And I'm not saying complete elimination. It can work for some, depending on their hormones, which we'll get into. But simply just getting away from the box foods, getting away from, these processed foods, and even first step for many is just going whole foods. But also looking at other ways, that we are getting our mineral rich water, avoiding things like heavy metals, non-native EMF devices, really gaining those electrons, going outside and grounding, cold exposure, heat. All of these are expanders when we look at this. Red light. I mean, I kind of cover my red light that's behind me, but any of these light exercise, movement, stretching is all going to help to end up and build this.
Yeah. And one of the things you guys all when my mom watches, she's like, I can't see your eyes. Well, that's because I'm wearing blue blockers. And what that is because I'm on my computer. This is helping to reduce that, what you just said, that light that is helping, because it's starting to get sunset. It's starting, to wind down. My body needs to start making, raising that melatonin and lowering that cortisol. So I'm ready for bed. And this actually helps. Now I'll keep these on. I'll actually switch them to an orange color once the sun sets. And then about an hour to 30 minutes before bed, I put on red lenses. All of that is helping to signal my brain that it's time to make that melatonin, along with, right, something I do every day is I get up, I use the bathroom, and then I go out, I get dressed because I do live in a travel trailer. So I think the other people in the RV park would appreciate me getting dressed, but I get dressed. I go outside. I get that morning light, that sunrise, without sunglasses. And all of that is working on things. And so what is all that doing, Becky?
I was just gearing up for sharing my screen. Sorry, Instagram. Well, I think Instagram, you can end up and see it. But so this is where you were talking about the different light that we're receiving, right? As the sun's coming up over the horizon and we are getting this active light, and we are connecting with nature and creating this connection. We rely on our hormones, our body, our circadian rhythm ends up and relies on certain signals of light depending where it is at in the day. So whether it is sunrise light, which tends to end up and be a little bit higher, we're never any of the spectrum. We are never getting a single bar of light, right? All of the light is coming through. It's just in different intensities, different lux, and different, strengths, if you will, throughout the day. So as the sun's coming up over the horizon, it is more of that red light. And then it goes into like solar noon, which is and for audio, I'm going to try and explain this the best I can so you can get an idea. The sun basically has a barcode, and as the sun comes up, it's more of a red, and then it's kind of orange, then yellow, and it starts to end up and go into more of this bright blue intensity of light, which is about solar noon. And then as it sets in the west, same thing happens. It goes from the blue in reverse. But what that ends up and it does is it helps to slowly upregulate our daytime hormones. So when we look at light, if you are someone that is getting up and you're kicking on artificial lights in the home, LED light bulbs or, anything along those lines, incandescent is the only one up here in, exhibit A that is more of like a gradual, and it does tend towards more of like the red intensity. But your standard light bulbs, your standard energy efficient light bulbs, right? Your LED bulbs are going to have these sharp peaks in the blue, sharp peaks in the green. And in comparison to G, H, and I here, where it is more balanced depending on the day or time of day, I should say. Morning light is more down there around J or I. Where it's more of that higher intensity. And then as we start to end up and gravitate into that later day, what this does is it does set our circadian rhythm. So many people don't look at their metabolism. They don't look at the inflammation. They don't look at hormones in relationship to circadian rhythm. And we really can't talk about the dietary side if we don't talk about circadian rhythm. We can't talk about, the grounding, if we don't end up and talk about, all of these other areas, because it all does end up in intertwine. But this sets our circadian rhythm. And why is that important? Because as the sun ends up and peaks over the horizon, the intensity of that blue light changes. And one, it is going to help your sleep that night. So it will help to store the melatonin in the pineal gland to help with nighttime sleep. Many people end up and get up in the morning, they're rushing, but also the blue light, it starts with the melanopsin receptors and it starts to fire and communicate with that suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is what then ends up and stores the melatonin into the pineal gland. But with that being said, what happens is this also slowly starts our daytime hormones. So many people will end up and have a dawn effect. We talked about type 2 diabetes.
Right.
Anyone that has had high blood sugar in the morning is because they're getting that dawn effect. They're starting to kick on lights. They've got, weight gain can end up and be a side effect, or inflammation. Again, like I said, obesity can be caused by, some of these other areas. And not many people are talking about this. They're talking about optimizing under a certain dietary camp. But if we end up, we optimize our circadian rhythm, that helps our 4 key hormones that are regulated by circadian rhythm: cortisol, melatonin, leptin, and insulin. And if we can end up and balance those by balancing our circadian rhythm, getting the light at the appropriate time, not getting, bright blue light in the evening. That's why I already have my red light kicked on, is because I'll work in the office up here until after sunset. And ideally you want to end up and see the sunset. So I will actually open my window so that I get that light in, but because it just takes a crack. So if you can't get outside, if you're in an office, open the window a little bit, crack that window so that you're able to get that light into the naked eye. Not sunglasses, not contacts. Get it into the naked eye. If you have glasses, pull them down a little bit on your nose so you're getting that angle of light. Don't stare directly at the sun.
Right.
Look at the horizon. But what happens is when we start to kick on lights, or we sit on the sofa and eat snacks and, binge watch TV in the evening, you're creating not only an insulin response by munching on snacks late at night, which also prevents the leptin from docking to the hypothalamus at night, but it does end up and create a secondary cortisol response over here in the evening time. And that is going to end up and prevent the melatonin. So you've done all this work all day long, you've got out, you've seen sunrise, you still struggle with sleep, is because you're creating that secondary cortisol response. That's where things, can end up and come into play as far as breath work in the evening time. I mean, you've seen the benefit of breath work and laying on your bed doing breath work with your blood sugar.
Yep. That was a 14-point swing. Less.
I was going to say to the positive.
To the positive, right. Just breathing, just going through the breath work. And we offer that inside the BNC community, and that's where I did it. It was one of the first few times I did it. I was wearing my CGM, my continuous glucose monitor, and literally it's like I looked at it, I said what the number was out loud. I think 5 minutes into it, we seen it drop a couple points, and by the end it had dropped 14 points. Just breathing, just laying in bed breathing. I mean, it was pretty amazing.
Yep. And so, many people don't do the breath work, they don't do tapping, they don't do any of this parasympathetic work. We're, restarting the breath work meeting again starting tomorrow. So if you are not familiar with breath work, end up enjoying the BNC community. Coach Kevin will end up and walk you through a breath work session, teach you, how to end up and positively use breath work to activate that parasympathetic. But why is this important? Because if you have low melatonin or the imbalance of melatonin, you're not getting it activated at the right point in the night, then that's going to interfere with your sleep, which also, again, means that leptin's not going to end up and be able to dock to the hypothalamus. Now, when insulin is high, it's like they're all on this axis of each other, right? And so if cortisol is high, you're not going to have melatonin. If insulin's high, you're not going to have leptin docking. The leptin is what tells your body that it has energy reserves to use. So if you have stubborn weight to lose, if you end up and have hormone issues, if you have, metabolism issues, this all goes into play as far as our day goes, as far as our hormones go. And so when the leptin docks, it does end up and help with the ghrelin the next day. And also on this aspect is where the mitochondrial import. Give us a show of hands in the comments as far as how many people have been told to lower your total cholesterol. Right. We end up, when we get told all the time to take medication by the, big pharma to lower our total cholesterol, to lower that cholesterol. One of the things that many people don't understand is cholesterol is also a mitochondrial import. So you can see this whole hormone cascade. The cortisol, when we get light throughout the day, it does end up and help in the morning to get the sunrise, to get the UVA. Here, we'll go to this slide. To get that UVA, because that helps the serotonin, the dopamine, the norepinephrine, the thyroid, the melanin. Obviously, you end up and you need to get protein. The amino acid precursors for these help with creating. But once we end up, when we get that UVA light, and it does help to pull this up and activate it within the body as a pre-step, right, to the vitamin D window right now. I know you sit outside a lot and get the vitamin D. Your window was open well before mine ever was. But being able to regulate your hormones. So I will speak for myself. I cannot speak for anyone else, but I personally, as someone that ended up and had a hysterectomy, I don't do HRT, but I really am very consistent with and very diligent about making this an everyday practice of getting my mitochondrial import with, and also getting the circadian rhythm every morning, every day. Working on that pregnenolone, working on controlling the cortisol, making sure I get seafood in during the week, because the DHA in here ends up and makes a big difference. But also balancing, not only if you are someone that has progesterone issues, estradiol issues, testosterone issues. So we're speaking to the men and the women in here, but
Yes.
being able to balance this, as well as if you are stressed, you're sending all of your hormones to create those stress hormones, and you're having a disruption in your other hormones. But like I said,
Well, and I'm going to jump in here and tell you what stress did. So, we put our house on the market back at the beginning of November, and ultimately we had closing at the very last day of February. It was highly stressful. We had quite the ordeal of who bought the house and how that went about. I literally, because of the stress, could, I mean, it was like daily. I was telling Becky, I'm gaining weight. I am gaining weight, and it's going in the middle, in my stomach area. And I knew what it was. I knew what the cause was. And the only thing I could do was to try and breathe, like do all the things we're talking about. It is now slowly coming off since we're beyond that. But stress is huge. And we're talking about, I mean, you're stressed and you're going out and you're finding something to nibble on because you're bored, because you're stressed. I mean, this plays into what Becky is talking about.
yeah, it does really all, like I said, it all plays a role together, and many people end up and overlook that.
Yep.
One of the other areas that is definitely overlooked is the detox side of things. Now, I'm not talking about cleanses or detoxes that several thousand juice cleanse, or anything along those lines. Our body has the ability to optimize our detoxing.
Well, let me stop you there and let me ask you this question. What is the primary detox pathways in the body and how do they function?
The kidneys, the liver, the gut, the skin. The skin is one of your largest organs. But also how they end up and they function. So once we are aligned naturally, our body has the ability. So that is where eating certain foods, we've talked about seasonal eating before. So if we are eating the wrong foods, we are giving our gut, first of all, the wrong signal, right? It ends up, if I was to eat a banana in the middle of, even like right now, but in the middle of wintertime, my gut is getting one signal, my eyes and my skin are getting another, and it's creating this misalignment. And so then that ends up and sends this wrong signal to the rest of the body. And the other detox pathway is the lymphatic system. But also the other part of the body that, having a sluggish liver, having, not proper hydration, being dehydrated, the kidneys filter things out of the body. So if we're not getting that hydration in there, we're not getting good sleep. The liver is, detoxing at nighttime. So if we're not getting that quality sleep, we're not supporting that aspect of the body. We're giving our gut a bunch of junk, right? It's going to end up and really bog down these detox pathways. If we're not supporting the lymphatic system, which there's ways of going about that, grounding, getting the minerals end up and help as well. Anytime that we can gain those electrons, that's going to help. Doing like fascia massage is going to end up and help to kind of break that down too. I mean, a lot of these practices that I have already talked about is free, right? We're not talking about expensive things. We are giving you free options, free areas that you can end up and do from the comfort of your home, but it's just about putting them into place and putting them into practice. Dry brushing is another one that many people don't do. Like I'm sure I like missed several, but castor oil packs, that's another way to help with supporting the liver and detoxing that.
Well, in going in with that too, it's the toxins that you're putting on your body, right? The perfumes, the when they say, oh, come on products, natural
fragrances,
right? That's not regulated. That's artificial. And you're rubbing that into your skin. So that's a disruption. One of the things that I'm highly passionate about is I use no fabric softener and I use no dryer sheets. I use dryer balls in my dryer. I'm pretty adamant about that because what's going on my clothes and it's against my skin. So that's something that in the beginning, I hadn't paid attention to that as much as I do now of what kind of, lotions and things like that. If I want, honestly, I've used castor oil on my face. I've used olive oil and I've used coconut oil. Because sometimes I'll get dry skin and stuff, and so instead of reaching for a moisturizer that's being sold over the counter, in your Walmart or whatever, I'm reaching for that because again, I have seen the differences in the beyond and what we're talking about.
Well, and that's where I will end up to take whipped tallow and mix some of my, essential oils into it and create, that's what originally got me into looking at the toxins that we end up when we consume, right? Or feed our body was essential oils. And man, it's been like 9-10 years ago already at this point. And that just kind of led from one area to another. But a lot of those are also endocrine disruptors. So, they can end up and really create havoc with the body. They can also end up and be estrogen, disrupt the estrogen, and just, like I said, whether it's fragrances, whether it's other chemicals and toxins that are in them. I can't tell you how many products I've seen that are a natural product, right? That
Yeah.
end up and create havoc. And it's just
Yeah.
more for the body to have to filter out, because again, the skin is the largest organ of the body, and it will absorb whatever you are putting on it, whatever you are spraying around it, whatever you are exposed to. So even like the little plugins that you plug into your outlet in your home, that all ends up and plays a role. I've got a diffuser over my shoulder that I will use my essential oils in. But like I said, it all does end up and play a role in there. And
Yeah.
it plays a role in our hormones. It plays a role in our inflammation, and it plays a role in the detox pathways, because it's just more our detox system. I explained this with histamines to someone earlier, and our body is like got several of these little buckets. And as we fill the bucket gets full, we end up with symptoms, right? So, because someone was discussing the fact of why, like oxalates, and why some people can consume this or not consume that, or whatever. And it really does have to go with kind of the seasonal eating, right? When I end up and I eat seasonal, I may have some of these foods that are, in season, they're higher in some of these anti-nutrients. I can tolerate them. Someone else that is, has a different metabolic standpoint may not be able to tolerate certain ones. But that also has to do with the leptin resistant, insulin resistant side of the body. But it also has to do with these buckets. And I can eat aged meat. I can eat, cured meat. Some people can't. And again, when that bucket is full and that bucket doesn't have the time to empty or detox, or you're not working on detox pathways. So one of the things also is people can get very strict and almost over strict with what they're doing. If you are just consistent with what you are doing and not try to 100% micromanage, but you are consistently making progress and changing what you're doing, right? Obviously, one of the other things is your leftovers. That's another big histamine type food, thing, is when we eat our leftovers, or when we end up, when we put them, many people are using plastic containers to store their leftovers in, and then they're heating them up in a microwave, right? So they're gaining these little microplastics along with chemicals that are released from that plastic when you heat it. That all ends up and makes a difference on our body. But one of the easiest ways, store your food in glass. That'll help to end up and cut down on that, right? Eating more whole fresh foods, but transitioning them on a circannual. So in the wintertime, I may not eat as much, fresh produce, because it's not growing out there, right? So yeah, just creating this variation also helps the metabolism. And when we do the same thing, it will downregulate.
Yeah, and Becky's gotten on to me for that, because I can get into the same thing over and over and over, and eating the same things over and over. And now that the season is changing, I'm actually going to start incorporating some lettuce. I can't do nightshades. It does cause me inflammation, so I have to be careful with the nightshades, the tomatoes. My mom asked me earlier, she goes, "Well, you still love tomatoes." I still love tomatoes, but I also know that's a nightshade, and the pain is not worth uh, consuming a tomato. It's just not worth it. I would rather just not eat it. Um, Now, if I went home to where my parents live in summer and they're growing the tomatoes, I might have one or two of them. But I also know when I'm going to hurt, right? That inflammation, it goes back to that inflammation thing, and people don't realize what the inflammation causes, right?
Mhm. Yep.
I said that
Many people don't end
backwards, I
up
think.
no, many people don't end up and relate the foods that they're consuming to the inflammation that they have within their body.
Correct.
And it's really not until we look at, some of, like I said, the anti-nutrients or the uric acid. Fructose is, so people that are consuming a lot of high fructose foods can end up and lead to gout issues. Um, so it really does end up and play a factor in there of the foods that we consume, but it's also not all just the foods that we're consuming. You know what I'm saying? It
Yes.
does end up now the food. So when we look at the foods that we are consuming, obviously the light plays a role, right? The food is grown under specific light. Um, Preferably, if you are also getting something grown locally, it is grown outside, not in a plant, right?
Yeah.
And so when we consume, right, there's three basic macronutrients: protein, carbs, and fats. What we look at when we look at the metabolism is how we are able to create this into energy. And that's where the electron transport chain comes in. Is how are we breaking down these food molecules, which are basically a light molecule, into energy in the body,
Yeah.
and creating, as long as we have good pathways within the body, we are able to create this. But that does also end up and take the minerals with the hydration that end up and have to play a role in there too, right? It's not just all I eat this food, it instantly goes to the ATP. It's got to come through the chain. It goes through different complexes of the electron transport chain. So, but then it also ends up and creates water, it creates chemical waste, it creates, as it also ends up and creates the ATP. Carbs, they end up and pull in more of that hydration. So when people end up and tend to go lower carb, they may have to put in a little bit more minerals to help get this messenger through the body, right?
Right.
Because anyone that has ever done low carb has kind of heard the whoosh effect, right? Once you go low carb, you can kind of flush some of that out of the body. They end up and they see a pretty good, weight loss if they hold on to a lot of fluid retention. So as we end up and we look at the pathways, we look at the metabolism, and we get more efficient at the, GLP-1, we get more efficient at the AMPK, the creating of ATP. These are all, different pathways and energy producers of the body. But it does end up and take some of these downstream actions to really be able to optimize the end result, which is creating optimal energy for the body, which the body likes to end up and also run on fat,
Right.
cholesterol.
Then, and going along with what you just said, I mean, if your medical professional is still telling you to avoid salt and have a low salt diet, you're really doing yourself a disservice here. That's what part of what Becky's talking about. Um, because if you're just drinking straight water, you're flushing minerals out of your body and you're not replenishing them. So when you're saying, well, I don't put salt on my food or I don't do this, well, if the thing is if you're eating highly processed food, yes, it is chock full of salt. But when you go more the whole foods and, the meats and just whole foods, let's just stop right there. Well, you need to add minerals to that. Without that, it causes a whole host of problems. Your magnesium's deficient. Your potassium is deficient. If you're getting cramps, leg cramps, restless legs, like there's a whole host of things that you need those minerals that Becky's talking about. And yes, we're talking salt. That doesn't mean that you pour a snowstorm on your food, but don't avoid it either. Put a little bit on your meat. Put some on, put some in your water.
Well,
I
and
don't know
that's
what else to
where,
add
I
to
mean,
that.
even just the trace minerals. So it goes
Yeah,
beyond just your salt, your magnesium, and your potassium. And
right,
depending on a person's metabolism, it also does end up to play a role of how they are able to get these minerals, right?
right.
So when we look at, say, myself, I know I'm a slower metabolizer of salt, but that doesn't
Mhm,
mean that I don't consume salt. Doesn't mean that
right.
I don't consume sodium. But if you are having any of the symptoms, of like tissue stiffness, poor HRV scores, this chronic inflammation, blood pressure issues, um, lightheaded, dizzy, puffy, swollen, any of those can end up and be associated with low mineral. Now, like I said, we need the minerals of in our body to end up and help. They're like the little transporters, right? Um, that help. They're the cofactor transporters that help get these essential chemicals into the body, into the cell where they need to go. We have some are in intracellular and some are extracellular or outside the cell, right? So we do need both in order to aid in the functioning of our body. And that is where many people end up, and they don't necessarily drink enough water with minerals. I personally use a mineral resin that helps me to
Mhm.
get 84 different trace minerals in there. But this all has to do with the biological molecule. So taking the body as a whole down to that quantum biology molecule level, right?
Yeah.
Which is kind of what we talk about with getting out in nature, getting, reconnected, the foods that we're consuming, the different ways that we can support the system. This all goes into effect. So by now you should be able to end up and see kind of how these are all working together, and intertwined, and that it's not just a simple, eat this meal plan or follow this, type of thing, um, but how we are creating this different synthesis within the body of all of these molecules and the breakdown and the metabolism and um, the energy aspect, whether we're using, fats um, as an energy to create those fatty acids and the lipids. So
Well, and if we've piqued your
it definitely.
interest on what we've talked about, we go in depth with this in the BNC community. Um, and we break it down more. Plus, you can get individualized coaching from any one of our coaches in the BNC community. You can book one on one with them as well. But we are talking about this all this that we've talked about tonight and more in the BNC community. It's you know again, like I referenced the WW, right? The Weight Watchers. I mean, they don't go into that, you know, they're not discussing all of this. We're in here going, you know, get out in the sunlight. Becky talks about she has aromatherapy. And I remember the first time Becky, I was like, she's going to sell me essential oils. That's what she's going to do, right? No, no. What I learned was way more than I ever thought, right? So that was neat. So we have that meeting every week. What's the one that's happening right after this?
The nutrition the nutrition macros and fat fasting meeting, where we kind of go into, the seasonal aspect of nutrition or fat fasting. I just did, a fat fast the beginning of April, a masterclass on that. The masterclass and the replay are still on the website. But we also look at, the difference in, we're not just a dogmatic community that is going to only, support one way of eating. We've got people that do anywhere from paleo to carnivore, and anywhere in between, because they know that I don't necessarily care for labels. If it works for you and you are progressing and you are feeling better, and it's more whole foods, right? No one's going to typically feel better eating a Twinkie diet. Sorry, Twinkie. But it's not going to happen. And so it is more of a whole foods based, with the exception of also learning how to strategic or strategize, to maybe help you optimize. And that's kind of where we end up when we go into it. Some people need to adjust based on where their ghrelin's at. Some people, their ghrelin and leptin signals are at. Some people need to adjust and their daily checklist, if you will, as far as what the timing of day that they're eating. Many people don't even realize that, but going back to, the cortisol and the leptin aspect, if you're eating too late, maybe you are eating, too close to bedtime, or you're still getting kind of a glucose response off a meal and you're getting an afternoon slump in the afternoon. So all of these type of things, really looking at how we can shift, how we can optimize, how we can, work this in. Some people have to eat 3 meals a day, some eat once, there's just so much variance, but that's all kind of things that we end up when we talk about in that meeting. So it's not just a, this is what you eat, but it is us telling our story, telling our journey, telling our path, and then also giving, the science or the studies, because I'm a nerd and I like my studies, in regards of like earlier time restricted eating or the circadian side of things, especially when it comes to gut health. So leaky gut does end up correlating also with, there's a lot of studies in circadian rhythm in regards to the disruption of the gut, in inflammatory bowel disease, IBD or IBS, plays a role in there too. So when we look at circadian rhythm, nutrition, this all goes hand in hand when we look at the gut motility. So the microbiome plays a role in there too.
And we're not in there pushing, supplements and high expensive things. And, we believe in free. We also believe in good, better, best. And so I bought this red light, and trust me, it was at the bottom of the food chain on that red light I bought, but it was where I was at the time that I needed it. I know it's probably needs to go in the trash, but I wasn't also going to pay a couple $100 or $1,000 to get a red light that it did its job, right? And that was the good, better, best scenario. We just think that there's more beyond the nutrition and things we can do that helps the body heal. That's why we call our podcast Healing the Whole Body, because that's what it's about. But we would love for you to join us in the BNC community. It's www.bncommunity.com. You can go there. You can also, if you go there, you'll see our swag. We're both wearing our BNC community shirts. And what else do we have on there? We have the metal cups you can get.
Yep. I didn't bring mine up here with me tonight, but we have 2 different metal cups. We've got sweatshirts, hoodies. So we have two different designs on t-shirts. So the ones that we are wearing, we also end up and have the logo of the Beyond Nutrition, but we've got it in different, we've got these in different colors, anywhere, like I think 5 different colors, but also sweatshirts, crew neck shirts, 2 different designs on the cups are all there as well. So
And we are going to be at Hack Your Health KetoCon the end the month of May in Austin, Texas. And we're actually, for the BNC community members, we're actually going to have a meetup on Friday evening. And we've got some fun stuff in store for those members that are coming to our meetup. I'm getting excited. It's getting closer to Hack Your Health. So if you feel like, if you're going, we would love for you to join the BNC community, and we will tell you where we're meeting on that Friday night. And, it's a good community is good when you have people backing you up, like-minded. I hosted my meetings on Friday at 11:30 Central during the day, and we went to what, 3 o'clock, I think. We just didn't stop, and we talked about everything. It was a fun meeting, but it's a supercharger mindset. And what I found listening to the folks in my meeting was everybody needed to be in that community. It was like, this is kind of what I'm going through. This is, and somebody else may have a suggestion, but it's about supercharging. And we were giggling, we were laughing, and you know what? That's a mood stabilizer like that. I got off of that just thinking, wow, what an amazing meeting. There's no structure to it. Sometimes I'll throw a topic out and we talk, but that's community. And we've got, Sly does her mental health, um, and yeah,
we've got about 10 to 12 different meetings per week. We've got Coach James that ends up and does the synergies of exercise. Coach Craig does an exercise one, or optimizing your weight training on Thursdays. Coach Sly does her mental health. Kevin does the breath work. You've got Supercharge. We've got the aromatherapy. We have potentially several more daytime ones. We've got 2 currently community socials. So people that just want to get together, and it does not matter to us if you talk about the sky being blue, right? Or, whatever the case may be, those socials are there to connect and create fellowship. And many of us connected online, but we are about ready to connect in person. And that conversation is going to pick up. Some of us have met in person. That conversation picks up right where, it left off on the computer. We create a family connection and intertwinedness with each other, that conversation continues like we were just, earphone in the ear, plugged in, right? It's just, that is the type of welcoming environment that we have created within the BNC. And any of the 8 coaches would be more than welcome to, welcome anyone in there.
Absolutely. So with that, don't forget to subscribe if you're on YouTube, comment, like, follow us. The more feedback we get, let us know what topics you would like to hear. Like we said, we're just 2 women. We don't even put makeup on and get dressed up, and we don't have microphones, and we don't have spotlights and, you know, the green screens. We don't do any of that. This is real every day. And that's what we wanted to represent, was everyday people. You know, that, hey, going to the grocery store is hard and it's expensive, right? So um we invite you to join us, but do like, subscribe, follow. And we are live every Monday evening at 7 p.m. Central. We are in the works of getting a couple more special guests to come on, and we can't wait for you to come back and join us next week.
Y'all are superstars. I appreciate you. I know who's writing that, and I do truly appreciate you. And just know we've got support for you. But everyone, we appreciate you. Have